So today I want to do something a little different. Most of the time in this class, I try to explain what is happening right now. I try to give you a framework. I try to give you the tools to understand the world. And we have been doing that a lot recently with this war. But today I want to make a prediction. Now, before I do that, I want to go back because I think it is important, very important to understand how we got here. Because if you understand how I made the first three predictions, you will understand why the new prediction I'm making today is not just a guess. It is not just an opinion. It is the logical conclusion of everything we have studied together in this class. Okay? So let's go back to May 2024. It is May 2024. Joe Biden is still the president of the United States. Donald Trump is facing 91 criminal charges. Most people in the media are saying Trump cannot win. Most people are saying there will be no war with Iran. The world looks relatively stable. And in this classroom, I made three predictions. Prediction number 1, Donald Trump will win the presidential election in November 2024. Prediction number 2, the United States will go to war with Iran. Prediction number 3, the United States will lose this war and this loss will forever change the global order. Now, 2 of these predictions have already come true. Trump won, America went to war with Iran, and the whole world is now watching to see if the third prediction comes true as well. But here is what I want you to understand today. I did not make those predictions because I am special. I did not make those predictions because I have some magical ability to see the future. I made those predictions because I used a method, a framework. And that framework is what I call predictive history, using game theory and structural patterns from history to understand where things are going. And today, I want to use that same framework to make my most important prediction yet. I want to tell you exactly how this war ends, okay? So, let me first explain the method and then I will walk you through the prediction step by step because I never want you to just accept what I say. I want you to see the reasoning. I want you to test it yourself. That is what this class is about. So, how do I make predictions? I look at 3 things. First, I look at structure. What are the deep structural forces shaping a situation? Things like geography, population, economic systems. These things do not change quickly. They constrain what is possible. Second, I look at incentives. In game theory, every player in the game is trying to maximize their own interest. So I ask, what does each player actually want? Not what they say they want, what they actually want. Because those 2 things are often very different. Third, I look at history, not because history repeats exactly. It does not. But because human beings are human beings, empires are empires, and certain patterns appear again and again across thousands of years. If you know those patterns, you can see them playing out in real time. Now, let me apply this to the question of how this war ends. And I want to do this carefully, step by step, because the answer is not simple, but it is logical. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Okay? First, let's understand what each player actually wants. Because, as I said, what people say they want and what they actually want are different things. What does America say it wants? It says it wants to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It says it wants to bring democracy to Iran. It says it wants peace and stability in the Middle East. Okay? Now, what does America actually want? America wants to maintain control over the global oil supply because the global oil supply is the foundation of the petrodollar system, and the petrodollar system is the foundation of American financial power. Remember what we have discussed before. Since 1973, all oil in the world has been traded in US dollars. This creates permanent global demand for the dollar. It is what allows America to print money and run huge deficits without its economy collapsing. Without the petrodollar, America cannot afford its military. Without its military, it cannot maintain its empire. So the real goal of this war is simple. Control the Middle East, control the oil, keep the petrodollar alive. Now, what does Iran want? Iran wants to survive. That is the most basic thing. Iran has been under American sanctions for decades. America has been trying to regime change Iran since 1979. Iran has watched what happened to Iraq when America invaded. It watched Libya get destroyed. It watched Syria get destabilized. Iran knows that if it does not fight back, it will be destroyed. So Iran's first and most fundamental goal is survival. But Iran also wants something more. Iran wants to be recognized as a legitimate regional power. It wants to end the sanctions permanently. It wants to control the Strait of Hormuz, not just now during the war, but permanently as a tool of economic leverage. And it wants its allies, Yemen, Hezbollah, Iraq, to be protected as part of any settlement. Now, what does Israel want? Israel wants to replace America as the dominant power in the Middle East. I have explained this before, and I will be brief today. Israel is auditioning to be the new empire. It is showing the global elite, the finance class, the asset managers, the people who actually run the global system. It is showing them that it is willing to fight, that it has the unity, the determination, the strategic intelligence to be the muscle of the global system when America is no longer able to do the job. And what do the Gulf states want? Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait. They want to survive too, but they are weak. They cannot fight on their own. And right now, they are trapped between two powers that are much stronger than them. Their strategy is to stay as close to whoever wins as possible. And they will flip very quickly to the winning side when they see which way things are going. Okay? Now, I have the players and their real interests. Let's look at the structural realities, because interest alone do not determine outcomes. Structure does. So here are the key structural facts of this war. And I want to go through these carefully because they are the foundation of my prediction. Structural fact number one, America is winning the air war, but cannot win the ground war. Let me explain this. In an air war, America is dominant. America has the most advanced fighter jets, the most advanced bombers, the most advanced targeting systems. And in the opening phase of this war, America did serious damage to Iran. It struck nuclear facilities. It targeted leadership. It tried to destroy missile and drone factories. But here is the problem. You cannot win a war from the air alone. This is not just my opinion. This is one of the most well-established facts in all of military history. No country in modern history has ever been regime changed purely from the air. You can bomb a country endlessly, and it will not surrender if the population is determined and the leadership is resilient. The Americans bombed North Vietnam for years. Vietnam did not surrender. The British bombed Germany for years in World War II. Germany did not surrender from the air. It surrendered when Soviet and American ground troops were physically inside its territory. So if America wants to achieve its goal of regime change in Iran, it eventually has to send ground troops. There is no other option. But a ground invasion of Iran is, as I have said many times, potentially catastrophic. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has a population of 90 million people. It is mountainous, and Iran has been preparing for a ground invasion for 25 years. Not 25 days, not 25 months, 25 years. Underground bases in mountain ranges, decentralized drone factories, weapon systems specifically designed to destroy helicopters, armored vehicles, and infantry. This is not something America can simply bomb its way through. Structural fact number 2, the cost exchange is unsustainable for America. We have discussed this before, but let me make it very simple. Iran fires a drone that costs $50,000. America fires a missile to shoot it down that costs $3 to $10 million. For every Iranian drone, America spends 60 to 200 times more money trying to stop it. Iran fires these drones in swarms, hundreds at a time. America is running through its interceptor stockpiles at a terrifying rate. In fact, we already know that America is racing to accomplish its military objectives before it runs out of interceptors. Let me say that again. The most powerful military in human history is in a race against the clock before it runs out of weapons. That is where we are. And America's military industrial complex, which is the most corrupt institution in the world, as I have argued many times, cannot quickly replace these stockpiles. The F-35 took 26 years to develop. Interceptor missiles take years to produce. Iran's drone factories, on the other hand, are dispersed across the country, hidden in basement and warehouses, and can be rebuilt quickly, even after strikes. This is an asymmetry that only gets worse for America over time. Structural fact number 3. The economic pressure is real and growing every day. The Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of the world's oil supply. Iran is effectively controlling it right now. This is not just a military issue. This is an economic weapon pointed directly at the global economy. And now Yemen has entered the war and is threatening the Red Sea, which carries another 12 to 15% of global trade. Think about what happens when both of these choke points are disrupted at the same time. Oil goes to $150, $200 a barrel, fertilizer becomes scarce, food prices rise globally, and a global recession begins. This creates political pressure inside America that no president can resist, because ordinary Americans are already asking, why are we fighting this war? Why are gas prices going up? Why is my grocery bill going up? And the answer is this war. Structural fact number 4, American political will is fragile and declining. Only about 40% of Americans support this war right now. That number will go down, not up, as casualties increase and economic pain grows. America is not a nation that accepts casualties. Well, we saw this in Vietnam, we saw this in Iraq, we saw this in Afghanistan. Every time America gets into a long, expensive, painful war with no clear victory in sight, the political will collapses. And with it, the ability to fund and sustain the war collapses too. Iran knows this. Iran has studied American psychology very carefully. For 20 years, Iran has been analyzing American political behavior. It knows that the American public has a pain threshold. And Iran's entire strategy is built around pushing America past that threshold. Okay? So now I have the structure, I have the players and their interests, and I have the key constraints. Now, let me give you the prediction. I believe this war ends in one of two ways. And which way it ends depends on one critical question. Does America send ground troops into Iran or not? Let me explain both scenarios. Scenario 1, America does not send ground troops. It keeps this an air war. In this scenario, America continues bombing Iran from the air. Iran continues firing drones and missiles. The war goes on for months, possibly years. America depletes its interceptor stockpiles. The cost keeps rising. The political pressure at home keeps building. Oil prices stay elevated. The global economy suffers. And eventually, and this is the key word, eventually, America looks for an exit, a face, saving way out. Trump goes on television and says something like, "We have achieved our objectives. We have significantly degraded Iran's military capabilities. We are declaring victory and bringing our forces home." But here is what actually happens. America withdraws from the Middle East. The Gulf states, seeing that America is leaving, immediately start hedging. Some of them, Qatar, Oman, moved toward Iran. Others, Saudi Arabia, UAE, moved toward Israel. The petrodollar system weakened significantly, and Iran, still standing, still in control of the Strait of Hormuz, emerges as a legitimate regional power for the first time in decades. In this scenario, America loses the war. But the loss is not catastrophic. America survives. It retreats from the Middle East, but it does not collapse. It is weakened. Yes, its credibility is damaged. Yes, but it does not fall. Now, let me tell you scenario 2. America sends ground troops into Iran. In this scenario, America decides that air power alone cannot achieve regime change. The pressure from the GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, becomes unbearable because they are being pounded by Iranian drones and missiles. And they are screaming at America to finish this once and for all. The pressure from Israel is enormous, and Trump, who does not have a clear strategy and who is increasingly desperate, decides to roll the dice and send in the Marines. This is where things get very dangerous because Iran has been waiting for exactly this moment. Today, I want to approach things differently. In most of our discussions, the goal has been to explain the present, what is happening right now, how to interpret events, and how to build a framework for understanding the world as it unfolds. We have applied that approach extensively, especially in analyzing this ongoing conflict. But today, I want to take a step further. I want to make a prediction. Before doing that, however, it is essential to revisit how we arrived here, because if you understand the method behind earlier predictions, you will understand why this new one is not a guess nor an opinion, but rather the logical continuation of the same analytical framework we have been developing. Let us go back to May 2024. At that time, Joe Biden was still the president of the United States. Donald Trump was facing numerous legal challenges, and the prevailing media narrative suggested that his political prospects were weak. Most analysts believed he would not return to power, and many also believed that a direct war with Iran was unlikely. The global environment appeared relatively stable on the surface. Within this context, I made 3 predictions. First, that Donald Trump would win the presidential election in November 2024. Second, that the United States would enter into a conflict with Iran. Third, that the United States would ultimately lose that conflict and that the consequences of that loss would significantly reshape the global order. Now, two of those predictions have already materialized. Trump returned to office, and the United States has become directly involved in conflict with Iran. The third prediction regarding the outcome and its broader implications remains in progress. It is important to emphasize that these predictions were not based on intuition, personal insight, or any extraordinary ability. They were derived from a method, what I call predictive history. This method combines three analytical pillars: structural forces, incentives, as understood through game theory, and recurring historical patterns. Let me briefly restate that framework. First, structure refers to the deep, slow-moving forces that shape outcomes, geography, demographics, economic systems, and material constraints. These do not change quickly and therefore impose limits on what is possible. Second, incentives focus on the motivations of key actors. In game theory, each participant in a system acts in accordance with their perceived interests. Importantly, what actors claim they want is often different from what they actually pursue. Third, history provides patterns. While history does not repeat itself exactly, it often rhymes. Similar structural conditions and incentives tend to produce similar types of outcomes across different eras. Using this framework, we can analyze the present conflict. The first step is to understand the actual objectives of the key players, not their stated goals, but their underlying strategic interests. The United States publicly frames its objectives in terms of preventing nuclear proliferation, promoting regional stability, and supporting democratic governance. However, from a structural perspective, its deeper interest lies in maintaining the stability of the global financial system, particularly the dollar-based energy trade system that underpins its economic influence. Iran, on the other hand, is primarily focused on survival. Decades of sanctions, external pressure, and regional threats have shaped a strategic posture centered on deterrence, resilience, and asymmetric defense. Beyond survival, Iran seeks recognition as a regional power, the lifting of sanctions, and long-term strategic leverage over critical geopolitical choke points. Israel's position is more complex but can be understood as a pursuit of long-term strategic dominance and security within the region, demonstrating its capability as a central military and technological power in a shifting global order. Meanwhile, the Gulf states occupy a more constrained position. They are economically significant, but militarily limited, and their strategies are largely reactive. Their primary objective is survival, coupled with alignment toward whichever side appears to be gaining the upper hand. With the actors and their incentives defined, we must next consider structural realities. One key structural factor is the limitation of air power. While air superiority allows for significant tactical advantage, history shows that air campaigns alone rarely achieve regime change. Ground presence has historically been required to compel political collapse or surrender. This introduces a critical constraint. Any attempt to decisively alter the balance of power within a country like Iran would, in theory, require ground operations, which dramatically increase complexity, cost, and risk. Another structural factor is cost asymmetry. Defensive systems designed to intercept low-cost, mass-produced weapons can become economically strained when forced to respond with disproportionately expensive countermeasures. Over time, this creates pressure on supply chains, budgets, and military readiness. A third factor is geography. Strategic choke points such as maritime passages that carry significant portions of global energy trade introduce leverage points that can influence not only regional stability but also global economic conditions. Disruptions in these areas can lead to rising energy prices, inflationary pressures, and broader macroeconomic instability. A fourth factor is political sustainability. Democracies, including the United States, are sensitive to public opinion, economic conditions, and casualty tolerance. Prolonged conflicts without clear resolution tend to erode public support, which in turn constrains policy decisions. When these structural elements are combined with incentives, a clearer picture begins to emerge. Based on this framework, the conflict appears to evolve along two primary paths, both dependent on a single critical variable: whether a ground invasion occurs. In the first scenario, no ground invasion takes place. The conflict remains primarily aerial and asymmetric. In this case, the war becomes prolonged. Costs accumulate, political pressure increases, economic effects intensify, and eventually, a strategic reassessment leads to withdrawal. The outcome in this scenario is not immediate collapse, but rather a managed exit accompanied by a shift in regional influence. The United States reduces its direct presence while regional actors adjust their alignments accordingly. In the second scenario, a ground invasion is initiated. This dramatically escalates the conflict. Ground operations introduce higher casualties, logistical challenges, and the risk of multi-front escalation across the region. In such a scenario, the war becomes significantly more complex and costly, both militarily and politically. The strain on domestic institutions, public support, and economic stability would increase substantially. From a structural standpoint, the likelihood of a full-scale ground invasion is constrained by these costs. The scale of manpower required, combined with the political and economic consequences, creates strong internal resistance within decision-making institutions. As a result, limited engagements may occur, but a large-scale invasion remains improbable under these conditions. Based on this reasoning, the first prediction is that a full ground invasion of Iran is unlikely. The second prediction is that the United States will gradually reduce its military footprint in the Middle East over a period of time, driven by economic pressure, political considerations, and strategic recalibration. This withdrawal would not necessarily occur as a single event, but rather as a process shaped by shifting priorities, domestic constraints, and international dynamics. The third prediction concerns the long-term regional order. In the absence of a dominant external stabilizing power, regional systems tend to reorganize around multiple centers of influence. In this case, it is plausible that Iran and Israel emerge as primary regional powers, each exerting influence over different spheres. Other regional actors would likely align themselves based on strategic interests, economic dependencies, and security considerations. Over time, even ideological rivals may settle into patterns of coexistence driven by mutual recognition of power balances. This does not imply cooperation, but rather a pragmatic equilibrium shaped by necessity. Finally, several key questions arise. Nuclear weapons, given their historical taboo and catastrophic implications, remain highly unlikely to be used. Their deployment would fundamentally alter global norms and trigger widespread proliferation, making their use a last resort scenario that all major actors are strongly incentivized to avoid. Direct negotiations between adversarial parties are also complicated by trust deficits. Past agreements that were later abandoned have created skepticism, making durable settlements dependent not merely on agreements, but on verifiable changes in underlying realities. As for timing, predicting precise timelines in geopolitical systems is inherently difficult. However, structural pressures tend to accumulate gradually until